Hi, welcome. My name is Danelle, and today I'm sharing with you the painting I did yesterday. I was getting back to my roots of oil painting animals. This is a kingfisher bird I painted yesterday from a friend's photo who gave me permission to use her photograph. And that is really what I studied in college. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting. And I also, in addition to getting a degree from Oregon State University, I spent a year studying at Grey School of Art in Aberdeen, Scotland. And Scotland is really where I started painting more seriously. And it was really cool going to an actual art school because I could just totally immerse myself in art, whereas in the university we would have art classes, but then we would have other classes as well to satisfy our requirements. So I credit Grey School of Art with really getting me started. Over the years I have had a couple of large solo exhibitions, and one focused on beasts of the Bible. And that was really fun. I just went through the Bible and found all the animals that were in there. Baal's donkey who spoke, and the pigs, a couple of the pigs who got sent over the cliff when a demon was cast out. So I had a lot of fun with that show. I had another show that featured animals from the Alaska Native Tlingit stories. The Tlingit are the people who first lived on this land where we live in Ketchikan, Alaska, and they have some really amazing stories. They have such a rich history of art and culture, and there's quite a few really interesting animals in their stories as well, ravens and octopus, or land otters, which are river otters, but in their stories they're called land otters. So I've had a lot of fun painting animals over the years. I've done more pet portrait commissions than I can count. And but in the last few months I've really been focusing on new mediums. I've been working on watercolor and acrylic gouache and new subjects. I have been painting landscapes every day while I'm out on my hikes and adventures. You can find mini vlogs on my channel that are vlogs of me hiking to a beautiful spot and painting. But yesterday I thought I would get back to my studio and get back to my roots and paint this kingfisher. So I hope you enjoy following along. It's a little bit of a tutorial, just a little bit of sharing what I do and my thought process as I'm painting. So here we go. I'm going to share with you what the paints I use, and I hope you enjoy this and learn something. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments, if you have suggestions or if you have challenges that you've overcome that you would like to share, if you have ways that I could have improved this process. I also, although this is my traditional way of working, a little bit larger canvas and an animal, what is new to me is painting Alla prima. I painted this in about an hour and a half. In the past, I always would paint a thin, kind of messy layer, let it dry, and then I would do usually like 2 more layers, just building it up. So this does include a new process that I'm learning, the Alla prima process. I feel like I'm getting better at that because on hikes I have very little time, so I have to paint fast. I tried to use a little larger brushes for this so I wouldn't get too fussy. I was pretty happy with how quickly this came together. I had drawn this in pencil. I'll show a photo of my pencil drawing a couple of weeks ago, so I had a fairly good understanding before I dove into this, and then I just drew that on there. It went pretty quick. I'm thinking I might need to adjust the tail a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. Okay, I'll see you in the painting. This is a palette I've used for a long time, a couple new colors, cerulean and ivory black. There's my reference photo. So the first thing I do is draw some grid lines on there. I had grid lines on the reference photo, so this really helped me to be able to draw this in really quickly. And so I start sketching that in with a mixture of alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. And there is a wash on the canvas. This is a stretched canvas. I used cadmium yellow and yellow ochre and some white to create that wash. I've been experimenting with that. That is another new thing that I've been trying from watching a lot of tutorials on YouTube, is having a wash of a neutral color. I like using a warm colored wash, like a yellow. I haven't really tried a cool colored wash yet. I thought it would be kind of nice for this painting, being that it's painted on such a cool colored bird. It's mostly blues and deep, almost purplish colors. And I think it's really nice to have that wash on there. I can't believe I hadn't been trying that before. Over the years, although I have a degree in painting, I've learned a lot through watching YouTube videos in the last year. So I'm just trying to get those darks in there. Some of the highlights on that's the best part of a kingfisher, is their fun hairdo. And this was pretty easy. If you get your drawing correct, the painting will just go so much easier. So my advice would be to really get your drawing down before you start. If you don't like your drawing, if you are doing your sketch in thin paint, you can just take your paper towel, maybe with a little bit of thinner on it, and you can scrub it off. I did end up adjusting his tail just a little bit, but you can adjust it. I would suggest making sure your drawing is correct, though, before you start putting a lot of paint on, even though I am very excited to get started with the actual painting, so sometimes I get impatient, but that can create a lot of frustration and adjustment when you've got a lot of paint on there, and it can be difficult to adjust, especially if you're doing an alla prima painting all in one session. I know Richard Schmid's book, Alla Prima. I have his first book, just Alla Prima. And one thing that he talks about is getting every brush stroke correct the first time, so you do not have to go back and do a bunch of corrections. I'm not quite to that level yet. You can see, especially later in the last half an hour or so I worked on this. This was a total 1.5 hour long painting session. In the last half hour or so, I did do quite a bit of just small little, I don't know if I'd call them corrections, but there are a few little color corrections. The drawing I didn't really have to correct, except for, did a little bit with the tail. I got the tail at not the perfect angle in my first try. But I am trying this alla prima method, which I really had never done before in the first almost 40 years of painting. I've only been trying this alla prima all in one sitting approach since about May, when I started focusing on this channel. So that's been really fun. It's kind of nice to just have something finished in one sitting instead of letting it dry and going back and working over and over it again. It's very satisfying. You can get a lot more paintings done that way, and it's a little bit different approach, though. I do have to be more careful, because usually on my first go round with a painting, I would just put very fast and loose, thin washes on, and it didn't really matter as much. I still needed to get my drawing correct in the first session, but I didn't have to worry quite so much that the colors were just right, and the placement of the colors, the values. I would always try to get my darks in really carefully on my first session, but I didn't add the lights or the details till really the third session in a painting. And my second session with a painting tended to, I never really enjoyed it, because the second session was really messy. I was trying to correct problems. So I really like alla prima, because you're not fixing and dealing with the problems you created in your first session so much, but you do have to be more thoughtful. But I am really liking this alla prima approach. So here I'm just trying to get the bird in, get that all done. That's another thing that is different for me too. I'm not sure if that's something I'll stick with or not, is I'm painting the bird, and in the previous way I always painted is I would paint the whole canvas. I'd work on the whole canvas all at the same time, the background, the subject, everything all at once. And I think that can be actually a really good way to make sure that your your entire composition has some cohesiveness. Some of the colors from your subject get into the background and get into the other details. This is a very simple composition. I think possibly that would have been a good idea with this one, because at the end you'll see that I'm struggling a little bit with how to approach the background. So I do kind of wish I would have worked on the background more instead of just practically finishing the bird before I tackled the background. I think I would have had a better idea of what I wanted the background to look like. That would have been another thing. I think with Alla prima painting too, you need to take time to really plan the painting out. Where your dark's going to be, what is your background going to look like. And although I did have a plan for this bird, I really didn't have a great plan for the background. The reference photo had a whole bunch of just kind of blurry greens from the trees in the background. I could have followed that a little more carefully, I guess, but I didn't think very much about the background before I started, so I think that would have been something I would have changed if I did this painting again. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out, but that, I think not knowing what to do with the background after I finished the bird was just a little bit frustrating, because I was like, yay, now I finished the bird, and then I'm like, wait, I have all this empty space I need to fill up now. I don't know if you have kingfishers where you live, but they're really, really awesome little birds. They're very, very fast moving. They're great divers. They mostly eat little fish and creatures in the water. They make this really loud chattering noise. When I was on my hike this morning, I could hear them chattering and yelling over near a creek that was nearby, and so that was kind of fun, being that I had just painted one. They're kind of hard to see because they're very small birds for how voracious and energetic personalities they have. They're excellent hunters, but they're quite small. I would say they're about the size, I think maybe smaller than a robin, but we have a lot of these birds here. I don't know a lot about their behaviors and their ecology, but they're beautiful little birds, and we do see them a lot because we have a lot of water here, so there's good hunting for them. So here I am just trying to figure out what I want to do with the background. I'm putting in a lot of scribbles. I not only don't know what I want to put in the background, but I'm trying to even figure out the values. Where should the darks go? Where should the lights go? How dark should I go? How light should I go? And I already liked the painting of the bird so much, I didn't want to accidentally mess up the bird by painting around it too much. So that would be something I'd do different next time, is work on the background simultaneously with the bird. You can see I had to paint right over his adorable little scruffy hairdo to get the background in there, so I have to go back in and repaint that. So that wasn't great, but it's not hard to repaint that hairdo. But it was fun to work in oils again. I have been working so much with water media lately because I do take my in plein air oil set out with me sometimes, but it's messier and heavier than my watercolor or my gouache sets. So I don't like hiking with my oil in plein air set as much as I do my water-based sets. So I hadn't painted any oil paintings in my studio for a while, so it was fun to get out and do that again. And here I am just brightening up his face a little. It got a little too dark. Doing his hairdo again, making a mess, fixing it. Can't do painting without some paper towels. I seem almost more critical than my brushes. And these guys tend to perch way out on the ends of sticks that jut out so they can see really well. They almost hunt like our bald eagles, where they want to be way out above the water where they can see their prey more easily. Getting the wing sharpened up. Getting the hint of feathers in there. The very, very smooth, sharp feathers. And now just getting in the final details. Getting his little white dot. They have these little white dots and very small white stripes on the tips of their wings and their tail. So then I realized, oh, I didn't put, that's actually not just one feather on his tail. It's more than one feather, so I needed to have some delineation there. So then I can put in the white dots after that. And it's always fun doing those final details. Just getting some little highlights here and there. Just using, there's a lot of cerulean and ultramarine blue in there. And I did use some Mars black. Now we were taught in art school never to use black, but I watched a YouTube video about ivory black and how you can make some interesting greens with it. So I hesitantly bought it and tried it out a couple of times. This is maybe the second or third time I've ever used it, and it is pretty useful. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. It feels like I'm really breaking a big rule when I use black. I used to always make black only with burnt umber mixed with ultramarine blue, but I think it worked pretty well in this painting. And then sharpening up that white mark right in front of his eye, getting the highlight in his eye correct. Just those last little subtleties in his face. And then I realized I didn't have his chest quite right. I had it very round, but they're built a little bit like little bodybuilders. Their chest is kind of strong and bulges out, and then in their abdomen kind of tucks in. It's got a trim little waist. So I changed the shape of that just a little bit, and then I had to go back and adjust. I'm just adjusting everywhere right now. Brightening up his patch there on his beak and on his chest, using a little yellow ochre, and then I go back to the background because I'm still not happy with it. I definitely want to, next time I need to plan the background. It's one thing with animal portraits, which I've done a lot of. You can get so focused on the animal you forget there's a background that you need to plan and you need to make it complement the animal, not be a distraction. You want it to make the animal stand out. I'm not sure if I'm still happy with the background, but that's what I got. Thanks for sticking around to watch the whole painting process. If you'd like to see some of the vlogs that I do where I'm on the trails of the beautiful Tongass National Forest here in Southeast Alaska, consider subscribing so you don't miss any of those. Hope you hit that like button if you made it this far, and stay creative and have fun.